They say imitation is the highest form of flattery. But what does it entail in art? We get real and raw with watercolor artist Rachael Moyles and discuss the difference between copying and drawing inspiration. As hobbyist or someone starting out in watercolor, where do we draw the line of learning from copying and defining your own style? Listen in as we further talked about patience and determination to get better in art, why materials can make or break your creative journey, the importance of community building to your growth as an artist, social media, and why you should not keep your feed curated, keeping your beginner's work in your archives and pulling them out once in a while, and why it is okay to cut back on your expectations at the beginning stage of your art journey. If you want to be part of the conversation, then send in your questions and topics you want us to cover to hello@etcherlab.com. Hey, this is Jessie from Etcher. We believe in your power to create, so we invited artists from all around the globe to inspire you to keep on creating. Join us in this journey and let's celebrate creativity. This is Make More Art, the podcast.
I've always been like a pretty artistic person. Like as a kid, I really enjoyed drawing animals. Mm-hmm. And especially I had cats growing up. So I drew a lot of cats. I've always been involved with horses. So I have 2 horses, and from a young kid, I was like obsessed with trying to like figure out how to draw them and stuff like that. So I did a lot of that. But I didn't really do any painting per se. My aunt Kathleen, she's very artistic and has been since she was a kid, and she kind of passed that down to me. So I spent a lot of time at her house, and we would draw together, and like she was kind of like the fostering of my art and like my artistic, I guess, beginnings, I suppose, because when I was in high school, when I was in, and even in college, I didn't take any art classes. I took art classes up through like middle school and stuff like that, because that's part of the curriculum. But beyond that, I didn't really. And when I was in college, it was the end of 2018, I want to say. I was on Instagram, just like on my regular Instagram, and for whatever reason, it showed me like a video of somebody like watercolor painting a galaxy, and I was like, whoa, that's really cool. Okay. So that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get like, and I didn't have any experience with watercolors. I had experience with watercolors like when you're like a little kid and you get like those cheap little sets, right? Like from the dollar store. Yeah. Yes. So I had experience with that, but I had no experience with the medium otherwise. Like I would draw with colored pencils. I had some experience with pastels, but not a lot. Just very surface level experience. And I saw that and I was like, I really want to try that. So I did. I purchased a really cheap set of watercolors, and they were like really chalky, and they were really like not great. Now, but I didn't know that at the time. I had just purchased like some just basically cheap supplies, cheap watercolor, cheap paper, and I tried. I was like sat down. I was like, I'm going to paint this. It went terribly. Okay. I had no idea why everything was like, this doesn't look right, and why aren't the paints, doing what the artist in the video, like how she was manipulating them, but for whatever reason, I was like so determined. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna look into it some more, and I asked my aunt Kathleen, I asked her about some like watercolors and stuff because she had some. And she gave me some like advice to like get maybe some tube paints, like, go from there. And I started with those. I started with some, like basic YouTube tutorial videos. You go online and I'd try from there. And then it kind of turned into like a whole side business. I just kept kept going. And slowly got better and stuff.
Yeah. That was a really good story to begin with. And I love your aunt, by the way.
Yes, she is absolutely wonderful.
I wish all aunts out there would be as supportive, especially in art. And you said that you've always been creative, but you've never really tried painting before. So watercolor came in like a lot of art back in 2018. Is that right?
2018, yeah.
I also like the fact that you started with Galaxy. And I said that because when you look at the finished artwork of Galaxy, like it will blow your mind. And I know from a lot of kids out there, they're really fascinated with that. And even adults, right? When you look at the paintings, like, wow, those merge, the way the colors merge with each other. And those, how do you do the stars? Those are the common questions. So take me through when you first started. I know you mentioned this earlier when you said that it wasn't that good because you used cheap materials. So how long did it take you to get to the point that you're comfortable and you're satisfied with the output? And so sort of the materials or bias matter? Because I know you did mention that it was a bit chalky, but take me through that phase when you first started down to the time where you say, okay, I think I got it. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that I ever feel like I am truly satisfied with each of my pieces, which is very typical of an artist, I suppose, never quite satisfied with their work. But that's not entirely true because there are some pieces that I do look at and I'm like, wow, I really love this. I'm really proud of this. But taking myself through that process, I'm trying to think back because at the time, whenever I would produce a painting that wow, I'm actually really proud of this. This turned out better than I thought. I have looked back at those now and thought, oh my God, I can do so much better now. But at the time I was very proud. And it was important to have those steps because you got to cut yourself some slack. It's a learning process. And nobody likes the learning curve. I hate the learning curve. And especially yes, everybody, it's difficult to overcome, but you have to give yourself some credit and you have to tell yourself hey, I'm learning. This doesn't have to be good enough to hang in an art museum or be the master's work of the Sistine Chapel or something like that. It doesn't have to be. You just have to be enjoying it. That's really what it comes down to. Do I enjoy every single time I sit down to paint? No. But
that is a truth.
Yes. I enjoy it enough that I keep coming back. And that is the biggest thing. You have to allow yourself to play with it. You have to give yourself the patience. And you also, I think you need to have, and I said this earlier, a little bit of a better supply than your basic dollar store things. You can work with it. If that's the only thing that you have access to, by all means, they will work. But if you can throw a couple more pennies in that direction, you'll be a lot more satisfied with what you produce. And that's because they're better quality, the materials. So when I started switching to some better quality materials and I went back to these, YouTube videos and these web pages explaining what is happening, it made a lot more sense because those paints behaved in that way that other artists were talking about. And because of that, I was able to apply it, play with them a little bit, and understand, okay, this is what is happening here. These watercolor paints have a different binder, so they're going to, move in the water more than these, student grade paints that have more binders in them than pigment, that kind of thing. So it's a combination of patience, giving yourself the time to learn, even when you might not like the results that you're producing, and having a little bit of better supplies. But honestly, I think that like the determination is the most important bit. You can make do with what you have. You just have to maybe be a little bit more creative with how you use the supplies. But experimenting and keeping your old work to look back on, I think those are like some of the most important things.
Love that. And
Yes.
I think you nailed it when you said you have to enjoy the process, and you need to have the patience. You said that, and then determination, and you make do what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Another question a follow-up question to that is,
Yeah,
were you that someone who was started as a hobbyist in watercolor who posted their works online? Because there are some people who are like, I'm kind of shy to let anyone see my works because it's from my perspective, it's not good enough. But did you share it on the get-go, and when you started in your journey with watercolor?
So actually, if you go on my Instagram and you scroll all the way to the bottom, it's not watercolor that's there. It's sketches from my sketchbook. I got a whiff of Inktober 2018. And I was like, oh my God, what a cool art challenge. Like I haven't really drawn a lot in a long time. Like I should do that.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. Like I have sketches of like, I can't even remember. I think there's like a sketch of a horse at the bottom. I think that's like literally my first post.
Okay.
And I shared it because I just, I think I shared it to kind of hold myself accountable. Like I saw this challenge and I was like, I think I like really want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not draw every day. I tried, but it didn't work out that way. But then I just started sharing photos of my watercolor, I think, because I wanted to have myself that accountability, but I had also heard a lot of really good things about the artist community on Instagram. And I still have a lot of good things to say about that community. And I think from there, I just wanted to talk to other people who were doing the same things and learn from others. I wanted to see other people's posts. So I followed a lot of people and got tips from them sharing like their artwork and stuff. And then I kind of like continued on and almost like now it is like what it is now, but like it's always evolving and changing. But yeah, no, it was literally just like Inktober sketches when I first started posting. And my account was called like Rachael Sketches. Like it wasn't anything like it is right now.
Okay, so it went through a series of change, especially for the IG handler.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. So you started with ink. You joined the Inktober challenge. I think a lot of people, but it's also very, it's a cool challenge.
It's awesome.
You mentioned community as well, because I know for anyone who's starting out, when I started out, that was a huge factor that kept me going because I felt that I was welcome. Did you feel the same thing when you first started publishing your works and you started reaching out to other artists, meeting them online? How does that help you in your journey of like getting better in your craft?
So the community aspect, it was amazing because I was finally able to like talk to other artists. A lot of times, especially in the beginning, I would ask them what supplies they were using because I either liked like maybe the vibrancy of the colors or I just enjoyed how the textures looked, anything like that. So I would often ask people what supplies they were using and like, how did they like them? Would they recommend them to others? And, I'd get the various feedback responses like, yeah, this is amazing. This is my favorite, paint set, or like, no, don't use this paper. It sucks, that type of thing.
But so that was feedback. Very wrong.
Yes. They didn't usually hold back. And then, you would get some encouragement from others. And that was like, whenever somebody posted like a comment on my artwork and they're like, wow, this is really cool. I was like, this just made my day. Like the encouragement of it was fantastic. And rarely did I come across people who like would post negative comments, which was very, very good. And overall, my experience with at least the community on Instagram has been very positive. I know there are people who have had issues, but I feel as that if you present yourself as a positive person, and with sharing your art, if you're just like, hey, like I made this, I put this out here, usually people are really excited to like engage with it and engage with you. I feel most people are very genuine, especially in the artist community, and especially in like the etcher community. I would say like the Facebook group. When I joined the Facebook group, I was like, wow, this is amazing. There are so many people and everybody gives each other like really good feedback, and it's so kind, and like that, like props to you guys and kudos to you guys for creating that, because I am very impressed with like the community that you guys have fostered. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Really cool people.
Thank you. And we love how engaged that community is.
Yes.
And you know, we started that, but it is the community itself, the people who are a member of that group who really connected with each other. And like what you said, giving out tips and feedback, which is, you know, that's what art is all about. It connects people on a certain level. And like personally, that's the same story for me. I learned a lot from the people that I follow. And speaking of that, another question that I have on that topic about community, and this is probably a controversial topic when it comes to style. You are into galaxy painting right now, and your colors are so distinct. And there's another, you know, you don't do galaxy not just on paper, but also nude. We'll get to that in a bit. But what's your take when it comes to, let's say, for the lack of a better term, like copying a style of someone else when you're starting out, and eventually identifying your own style as you practice more of, say, watercolor? Do you think that is a good starting point to identify what your style is? Or would you recommend someone to just keep on trying and not look so much on other people's work, because that will either leave you in a comparison mode, which is not very good for someone who's starting out?
So when I first started with watercolors, like I mentioned before, I looked up like YouTube tutorials and I tried to follow along. Those were pretty much like exact copies. Well, copies, you know, they weren't perfect because every single painting is different. But when I first started, I did look at other people's work. I would often reference them. I would say like, hey, you know, tried this person's tutorial. This is how it turned out. And more often than not, my work would always look different. And that's because I had produced it. And even just how we move our brush compared to someone else, maybe even how much water was on our brush, how much paint was on our brush. There are so many different factors that goes like into a particular painting that even when you're trying like super, super hard to copy somebody's work, it never turns out the same. But when it comes to like finding your own style, I feel like this is a question that artists like think about all the time.
Yes, I know.
And I wouldn't even say that I feel as though I don't really have a particular style. Like I when I'm painting, I just like sit down and like just go. Like I don't think about like, oh, I'm gonna do this tree this way, or like. But then again, I see a lot of like illustrative artists, you know, like Cheyenne Barton. I don't know if have you heard of Cheyenne Barton? She's not a watercolor artist, but she's somebody I follow on Instagram. She has a very particular style. You can, when you see, like, I don't even have to see her username to know that is her post.
Ooh, okay.
That is her work.
That kind of artist, yes.
Right. But I guess if you were just solely looking at my Instagram feed, I think that I have everything is kind of like the same theme, but I don't know. Style is hard. I feel as though I don't have a particular style, but someone else might be able to recognize my work like on an Instagram feed like that. But when it comes to beginners, I think copying people, and I put that in quotations because it's a subject, but copying other people's art, that's okay. You're learning. If you go to post it, reference the person that you might have, referenced the photo from. Copy them. And oftentimes people like myself, I'm very flattered if somebody like painted something, like tried something of Rachel's and stuff. And I'm like, wow, like this is so cool. Thank you for sharing with me. I have had experience where people have blatantly copied and not tagged me. And I'm a little bit like, okay, it's a little uncomfortable. I've only ever had to like reach out to like one person and say, hey, if you're going to like look at my work, just reference me. I don't mind, but it's touchy. Some artists feel differently about that. I say, if you're learning and you really admire somebody's work and you want to throw it into your sketchbook, go for it. I think you can learn a lot by looking at other people's paintings and studying them, if you consider it like a study. Copying somebody's work or taking a screenshot or whatever, and then like producing it and then going to sell it. No.
Yeah.
No. But I think there's a huge gray area. It all depends, I think, on what your, I guess, like intentions are, whether it's to learn or whether it's to copy. There's, copy with a little bit more of a malicious intent. I mean, but usually people aren't like that. They just want to learn. So very roundabout answer. So sorry. I just like word vomited.
No, you actually gave really good points about finding your style. And I so agree with you when it comes to looking after someone's work and trying to reproduce it, because you will learn as you go. And eventually, at least from my perspective, you will definitely identify your own style. It will show, like what you said, that every time that you try to follow someone's tutorial of their work, it always comes with something entirely different, because your creativity will kick into what you're doing, and that is the magic of art. And
exactly.
I guess the other question, since we're talking about like looking after some other people's work, whether on different social platforms, you said that you have a common theme. And that's evident in your work. And like I said, I love your galaxy paintings, whether it's paper or on wood. It's just so beautiful to look at. So magical to see. It looks good on the feed, right? It looks so good.
Yes, thank you.
The follow-up question to that is, I guess this is a common question for anyone who is maintaining a fan base or a following on any social platforms. Do you really have to stick to a certain theme? Keep your feed structured, curated, in order to, for whatever purpose, whether it's to maintain that theme in your social platform or to have that niche for your following on socials?
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to go about answering that question, because I love galaxies, but actually if you look at the work that I've posted lately, there's not a whole ton of them. And that's because as people, as artists, we shift in our different interests at the time. So lately, if I pick up a piece that's right next to me that I was working on, this is pine trees and whatnot. It's not a galaxy, but this is what I felt like painting. And my interests have been shifting a lot more towards landscape. It's just something that I wanted to learn. I'm also going through I want to learn how to paint clouds stage right now. So that's kind of the stuff that I've been posting lately. And any sort of social media platform is finicky. It is tricky. There's all kinds of crazy algorithms that go into it. Yeah. And it can be tough to balance what I want to do with what my audience might want to see. So, but when it comes down to it, and I often have to remind myself of this, is I want to paint what I want to paint. And if I want to share that, I will. But my life is not revolved around my social media platform. I work a full-time job that's not art. I am an environmental consultant. I have other hobbies. I own 2 horses. I've got a dog and all these other things. So when I have the time and the energy to paint, I will paint what I like and want. Oftentimes I will paint a galaxy because I'm comfortable with it. And it's kind of like a no-brainer type of work at this point.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I want to sit down and paint, but I don't want to think about it. That's when I go to like paint a galaxy. That might sound crazy to somebody else, but that's just like what I fall back on. But yeah, no, it's tough. There's a balance there. And I try to like walk that line, between painting and sharing what I want to paint and, painting something just for the audience. It really sucks the joy out of it though. When you're like, I'm just painting this because I'm going to post it. Like, and I have done that. And it sucks the joy right out of it. And then I personally think you can tell when like someone hasn't come at a painting with not necessarily joy, but with effort, with contentness. If you're just painting to just like throw it up on your Instagram or whatever social platform you use, there's usually a little bit less creativity in the painting. I personally think it's different though. There's sometimes I get ideas to like record something. Like I recently shared with folks, and it was because I was prepping a new metal palette that I had gotten. And I was like, I wonder if people know that they can use like toothpaste on their metal palette to like make the water, make the paint like less beat up, like it won't beat up as much. So I shared that with folks because I was like super excited. I was like, why do people know this? Yeah. And it like people were like, what? You can do that? So I'll get excited to share information like that. And then, I will specifically do something for that sharing. But no, when it comes to day to day, I just paint what I want. If I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. Very well said. And I also like the fact that you have other hobbies and that you mentioned a really good word there, balance. There's balance. And at the end of the day, you do what you do because it's what you love to do. And you don't stick to a specific theme just because it's what, of course, you want to serve, right? Your audience. Right. You want to be able to share something that's of value, but sacrificing what you love just so you can have and pull followers in. Yeah. You're absolutely right. That will suck the joy out of it.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
You have horses. Wow. 2 horses?
I do. I own 2 horses. They're not at my house or anything, but
you're right. I would assume. Wow.
Yes. Yes. For a majority of my life with my Aunt Kathleen that I mentioned, she introduced me to both horses and art. So she's kind of she's done like both things. They're big.
Oh, I would love to hear. I think she's very cool. Oh, well, she's so supportive. Now that explains. I saw a galaxy painting in one of your works, which is a horse. Yeah. So cool. So cool. Okay, let's talk about galaxy painting. Yeah. Okay, so you did mention that. Was that the first subject that you tried when you started with watercolor? Or was it? It was. Yes. Okay.
Trying to think back, it was either a Northern Lights or Galaxy. Some sort of night sky thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you draw inspiration, especially the colors, because they're so vibrant? And what I picked up in one of your Q&As, I think, in one of your highlights, that you try to use colors under the same family, if you could correct me if I'm wrong. Can you expand a little bit more on that, about, using those colors for galaxy painting?
Yes. So in regards to like the colors, I will pick colors under the same color family because when they mix together, they will be kind to one another. That's essentially what it is. So yes, like if you I don't know a ton about color theory. I'm still learning, but I know that when you mix opposite colors on the color wheel, they're going to they're going to neutralize each other, essentially. So if you mix yellow and purple together, you get some sort of brown. of some kind. So if you try to put those into a galaxy painting, and the way I do my galaxies is mostly wet on wet. So the paint is going to be mixing and doing its own thing, no matter what you're doing. No matter where you put it, it's going to spread out a little bit. So I'll use colors under that same color family, complementary colors, I think, complementary colors, so that they complement one another, of course. And then when they mix, they create, what's the word I'm looking for? Different tones that intermingle well. So, a lot of my galaxy paintings, like pink, purple, blue, they mix really well together. And they all kind of create different shades and tones when they're mixed together. So they look well. If you try to stick yellow in that, you got to be really careful about where you put down your paint. It can be done, but you got to be a lot more careful. So that is one of my suggestions to beginners who are interested in galaxy painting is pick a color set, pick yellow, green, blue. So if you mix, blue and yellow together, you get green. So those are a really good combo to try. I also suggest to people, I use indigo for my night sky color. And I don't usually use black because I don't always know what pigments have gone into the black. I find that the indigo is a deeper kind of color than straight up black. And also I just love indigo. So
I think that is really the main thing.
Yeah, it is really the main thing. I love the color.
But I think that's a very interesting thing that you said about black. I'm not sure if I heard it from someone else or I read it somewhere about watercolor. That in watercolor you don't use black. And the follow-up question is, why do we have that in the palette to begin with? Right? But yeah, right. I love indigo as well. And especially for the night sky. You're absolutely right about the black. I think it's too much to just put it on to the paper. Okay. Those are really, really good tips, Rachel. I know it's still a lot. But speaking of which, and you touched on this a little bit earlier when we're talking about social, like what you're posting, and you said that you love sharing information. So what I've gathered from there is that you're really posting something that really helps your audience, and that's really great because we all need that in our community. So teaching, when did you realize that this is something that I can teach? And we'll talk about the live painting workshop that you will be on the 26th. So let's talk about teaching.
Yeah. So, funny enough, my mom is a teacher. She has been a kindergarten teacher for a really, really long time. So I kind of picked up some tips and tricks from her, just from literally just being around her and growing up. But I did, when I started teaching, I started teaching horseback riding lessons. So when I was in high school, I started as a summer camp counselor at my barn where I rode. So that was my basis in teaching as a concept in of itself. And I continued with that up through college. And I only recently stopped teaching horseback riding lessons on the weekends. But that's where I got the base of teaching. Now, when it came to actually teaching watercolors, I was working at this place in my town called the Imaginarium, which is basically like this. It's a big building that it showcases sustainable practices. So the building, it's got 2 windmills that power it, stuff like that. And they were looking for activities to do, for adults to bring people in to use the space. And at the time I was doing a lot of galaxy bookmarks and stuff like that. And my boss asked me hey, you got any ideas? And I was like, well, we could do a paint and sip kind of thing, which is maybe not as popular as it was, however, 5 years ago, but like pre-COVID times, paint and sips were like super popular. And I was like, yeah, like I could do like a watercolor paint and sip. And they were like, sure. So gave it a try. I was like quaking in my shoes. I was so nervous because it was live. It was like there were people with me. It wasn't like online teaching. And I like managed to do it. I did it twice before COVID happened. But I found that I really enjoyed it, and I could apply some of the teaching skills that I kind of already had by breaking things down, making it more digestible for folks that had never done it before. So I really enjoyed that. And then I thought I got a whiff of a Skillshare. This was back in like 2019, 2020. So I thought, hey, like I'll try producing a class. And that was a lot of work, but I did it. And then at some other point during all that time, Etcher reached out to me for the first time and asked if I would be interested in teaching classes, some online classes. And I said, yes, absolutely. So it's been kind of like a long process. There are still some things that I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable teaching because I still feel like I'm learning. Okay. But I found that once I did it, and once like I overcame like that initial fear of, putting myself out there and saying, I'm the one that has the knowledge on this subject in this room, like that's kind of scary. Like, because people are going to come to you for questions. And my fear was, oh, what if I don't know the answer to that? But that didn't really happen. And if I didn't necessarily know the answer, I would give what I thought was best. And if it didn't really help them, I would come at it in a different angle. And it's hard to put yourself out there and, give an answer. And whenever you give an answer, that answer might not be right. Like there's no guarantee that it'll be the thing that helps the person, or if it like just makes them more confused. So it's difficult, but I found that I enjoy it. And when somebody, and this goes with like anything, whether it was when I was a horseback riding teacher or now with painting and teaching people, when somebody gets it, oh my God, it's the most rewarding feeling in the world.
Agreed.
It really is. It's like, oh yeah, you did it. Like, I'm so proud of you. It looks amazing, Yeah. Like, and oftentimes people are like, it doesn't look that good. What do you mean? This isn't beautiful. You just created this. Is that not amazing? So yeah, I have found that I really like the teaching. I still get a little nervous. Sometimes I think I blab too much, but people tell me that I don't. So it's all good.
I'm really glad that you enjoyed it, and you are enjoying it since you will be teaching with us on the 26th for me. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. What you will be doing for your mini workshop. I know there are, of course, they would really need to sign up to be able to really get all the techniques that you will be sharing with them. But what is it that you will be doing, just to give our audience a preview of what it is to expect for your mini workshop? Yes.
So we will be painting 2 different bookmarks, and I wish I had my paintings next to me, but I don't. We're going to be painting 2 different bookmarks. We're going to be breaking down the different elements of a lightning storm at sea. So we're going to have one bookmark is going to have some realistic looking waves. So basically some choppy waves, angry waves is going to be with that, with a little bit more of like a misty, stormy sky. And then on the other bookmark, I'm planning for us to really have that focus in the lightning sky. So that will have lightning and maybe some darker storm clouds and a little bit more of like a calmer sea. So with those like 4 different things, you can, once you learn them, you can break them down and you can apply them to, a lot of other pieces. If you want a choppy, angry looking sea with lightning, you can do that. If you want a calm sea and a calm, misty sky, you can do that. So, and we're going to be doing it on bookmark format because I find that it's a very digestible way. Smaller painting sizes are a lot less intimidating than big, giant canvases. So that's what we're going to be doing. And you get a little bookmark afterwards to stick in a book, which I always think is a good thing.
Love that you are giving them sort of festive bookmarks, the angry waves and then the calm one, and in a digestible bookmark size.
Yes.
Which is pretty good because you can absolutely use the bookmark and give it to someone after the workshop or after you finish the workshop, whether you're doing a recording. But that is a really good way to teach something, to be able to give them the foundation of both, and that those they can use on a bigger, if they want a bigger.
Yes.
And I absolutely agree with. Yes, I love painting smaller sizes because yes, they are less intimidating. I am excited for your mini workshop. That is happening on the 26th. At what time in Eastern?
2 p.m. Eastern time.
Perfect timing. Okay. So March 26th, 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be Rachel's mini workshop. So we will be adding that into the show notes. So you have the information. This podcast is coming out on Monday. That is on the 21st. So if you're listening to this, if you are interested to what she just shared, so angry waves versus the calm one, I'm interested about the angry waves because sometimes water can be really angry, and how you make it angry, that is also that's definitely something that I would look forward to learn. We'll definitely check it out. Thanks, Rachel. I had so much fun chatting with you, especially with the appearance of your cat. If you hadn't seen that at the beginning, we'll probably do that. But it's so nice to be able to hear your story and to learn your other hobbies and your perspective about like the balance in social media and staying true to what your passion is and not really getting lost into this sea of like numbers and vanity metrics on social. So just final words to our listeners. I know you have given them a lot of truth bombs and nuggets of wisdom during this interview, but any probably a final word to our listeners who are starting out and who would want to start with galaxy painting as their beginning subject in watercolor, what would be that golden nugget that you would like to share with them?
Yeah. So as a recovering perfectionist, I like to call myself, one of the biggest things that you have to give yourself that time to learn, give yourself that room to be patient, and understand that practice makes better, not practice makes perfect. And I will repeat those words until I am in my grave. Practice makes better. And I have to often repeat those words to myself because when we come at a painting and when we go to sit down, any work of art, anything that we're doing, we have expectations. And when we don't meet those expectations, we are often hard on ourselves and it's a negative experience. You want those experiences to be positive because if those experiences are positive, you're more likely to come back. You're more likely to sit down and say, I'm going to give this a go again. So when you come and sit down and you're ready to paint and you're like, I'm going to try this, whether it's a galaxy or whether it's a landscape or if it's a figure drawing, whatever, give yourself some slack, cut back on your expectations, which is something that I often have to tell myself. And remember that even with a painting that you don't like at the end of it, you will learn something. Whether you learn that, okay, this technique didn't work and this painting is now trash, which is never true. Always keep your paintings. Don't throw them in the trash. Keep them because one day when you have learned from that experience, you can come back to those paintings and say, hey, this is where I've come from, and this is how I've improved. And I have kept every single one of my paintings, even the ones that will never see the light of day again. But, maybe they will one day. And you have to give yourself that chance to look back and say, hey, this is where I came from. And this is how much I've learned. So that's the thing. Practice makes better. Keep your ugly paintings and just cut back on your expectations, especially as a beginner. And you know what? Actually, remove that statement. Cut back your expectations always, because it's so easy for me to be like, I'm gonna paint a masterpiece today, and it never happens. It never happens. So just give yourself a break. That is the biggest piece of advice I could give you guys, and enjoy the process. Yeah.
Oh, those are very well said, Rachel. I'm sure our listeners, they pick a lot from this episode, and thank you for your generosity to share your experience, your story with us and with our listeners. And we look forward to your mini workshop that's happening on the 26th of March at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
It'll be so fun. I'm really looking forward to painting with everyone. Sure. It's so much more fun painting with friends.
Yes, absolutely agree. And Rachel, you did mention the Facebook group. If you are not part of that yet, go ahead and sign up. It is a very engaged community, a lot of wonderful people there, helping out each other, giving feedback, and meeting other people through the art community is one of the best things.
It really is.
So
yeah.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for being part of Make More Art, the podcast. It's been a joy having you on, and forward to your mini workshop.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you, Rachel.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Bye.
That was a lovely episode with Rachel. I feel like we all needed that aunt who will support and foster that environment of creativity. We hope this episode helps clarify the gray area of copying and inspires you to create from the heart. Have you checked out our Facebook group? Do join us and let us know your feedback about this episode through the blog post associated with this podcast at etrolab.com/Rachel.
We would love to hear your thoughts, so please drop us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast, or you can find us on YouTube at Etro Studio. And hitting the subscribe button is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next time. Until then, let's make more art.